Welcome to the Meditation Conversation, the podcast to support your spiritual revolution. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin, and this episode with the amazing Mónica Esgueva is packed with such high wisdom. I know you're going to get so much out of it. When we stopped recording, we were amazed we managed to cover so much ground in such a short time. Mónica Esgueva is a renowned figure whose journey and expertise in mindfulness and personal transformation transforms lives globally. Monica's latest book, The 7 Levels of Wisdom, is a testament to her life's work and dedication. It promises to provide the keys to navigating life's challenges with greater awareness and purpose. I relate so much to Monica's journey and really appreciate the role she's playing in bridging the material and spiritual worlds. And I'm excited for you to dive into this episode, so we'll get started with her interview in just a second. But first, for you plant lovers out there, are you familiar with Pure Leaf? Pure Leaf is an alternative and complementary approach to conventional plant care and pest control methods. It's a natural, non-toxic alternative for caring for your plants. There are compounds to help give your plants more vitality, as well as address plant health issues. As a plant lover myself, I personally love the indoor superfood and nutrient booster. Try Pure Leaf for yourself and use code KARAG20 for a whopping 20% off your order. That's KARAG20 for 20% off. And now, enjoy this episode. Welcome, Mónica. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
I'm so excited too. Thank you for having me, Kara.
So let's start by talking about your journey and what led you to where you are today.
Well, I tried to make it a long story short.
Yeah.
I'll do my do that. I guess I was born very spiritual, and since I was a child, I was asking my father, my mother, and everyone that I could find, where do we come from, and what is the meaning of life? Questions that are not really typical of children. And of course, they couldn't answer me in a way that will calm me down. It was just not. It was not working. And I remember once, I don't know, maybe I was 6, 7, not very old, and I asked my father, where do I come from?" And he said, "Well, we just took you from under a bridge. You were living with some gypsies, and we brought you home." And I was like crying because, like, okay, I felt so misunderstood. He was like, "This is not it."
Yeah.
And I remember looking at the stars and say, my home is not here. My home is there. And I want to go home. Even if I had a very happy childhood and my parents have been really, really good. But still, there was always something missing in me. And when I grew up, I tried to find it in the Catholic Church because that was available at the time here in Spain. And of course, it didn't last long because I felt that the church had really corrupted, I could say, the message of Jesus' message, because it was all about love and forgiveness, and they made something else out of it.
And even as a child, you recognize that?
Yes. Yes. As a teenager, more than a child.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, when I was 14, 15, I started reading everything I could find on psychology, the nature of the mind, transcendence, spirituality, everything that I could find. And it was just progressive. And then I tried to fit in and have a normal life. Even though I do remember, it's like things that you remember right now, and they make sense only now because you understand more the whole picture. But I do remember being in a class and the professor was asking us, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And people will answer, my colleagues would say, "Okay, I want to have a big house. I want to get married. I want to have children. I want to be very successful as an architect, whatever." And when it was my turn, I said, "I want to become a wise person with a big heart."
Oh.
And, and then everybody was looking at me like, where is she coming from? So I always felt a little different or very different. But I tried to fit in. So I went to college and studied economics, and I finished a master's degree. And then I went to work for Prada in London. And then I went to work for a business school in Paris. I married early. So at that time, I had a very good material life, we could say, very good social life, very good holidays. I was living in one of the best neighborhoods in Paris. Everything seemed perfect from the outside, but I felt so unfulfilled. So at some point, I went to Dharamsala, which is a little town at the feet of the Himalayas in India. I wanted to do some research on Tibetans in exile, and a lot of them live there. I went there for 3 weeks, and then um, there was an unexpected turn of events, I could say, and I missed my flight home, so I had to stay, and I ended up staying 3 months.
Wow.
Yes, and those 3 months were really pivotal in my life because that was required. It was my destiny. It was required for me to be able to study with Tibetan lamas and receive teachings from the Dalai Lama. And then I understood I really had that resonance with them and their message. And I I wanted to learn more because it's like I understood that they had a very good map of the mind and of reality. And they had the same ultimate goal that I had, which it was enlightenment. It was really dissolving the ego and how to do it, which was so difficult for me to find in the West. So when I went back home, and home was Paris at the time, I realized I could not go on with my former life. So in a span of 6 months, I left my job, I left my home, my house, my plans, my money, my husband at the time.
Wow.
I left literally everything. I went back home to my parents' house and with whatever fitted in my car, and I started from scratch. I what I knew is okay. I don't know what I can do to earn a living, but I do know how not to waste my life. And I don't know how long I will have on this earth, but whatever time I have left, I want to dedicate it to contribute to a better world. And I didn't know how, but I knew that that was my aim. So what I did is I started getting some training, mainly in the US, studying mindfulness in UCLA and hypnosis in New York. I did some courses on psychology and neuroscience in MIT. And then at the same time, for 10 years, I went back to Asia, mainly India, north of India and Nepal, to keep studying with Tibetan lamas and receiving his teachings from the Dalai Lama. And I will spend 2 or 3 months every year. So in a way, I guess I feel like a bridge between the East and the West.
Wow.
And that's a little bit of my story.
That's amazing. I mean, I feel so much of myself in your story too. Especially like being a child and having these huge questions. I remember thinking, because I didn't grow up in a particularly religious background,
Mm.
but I knew about God as a concept and a being, and I was kind of always stumped by, well, how did God get there? Like, who created God? And then what was there like before time? That was always a big one that I spent a lot of time like just going in circles of like what about before this planet was here, and there had to be a before, and like time always just like the very big picture of time. But as a little kid, 4 or 5 years old, um and not having answers to those things, and, but it's incredible you've had, just these upper echelon experiences, it feels like even, from your experiences in the material world, and then also academia. I mean, studying at MIT, and then, you know, with the Dalai Lama, and all of these experiences are just like a different level. That's amazing. Wow.
Well, I guess we all have a path that is in front of us, and we signed up for that from our soul, before we came here. The thing is, because of the veil of forgetfulness, we don't remember.
Mm.
But it doesn't mean that it was not programmed. It was not signed up for, and I do think it's not just a belief. I have seen it during regression. For a while. I was a regression therapist, and I could see it. And I can even have some memories of it that, like, I signed up for this. And most of the things we don't remember, or most of the times we don't remember anything, but it doesn't mean that it's not for real. It doesn't mean that it's not planned. It's just that once you are here, the veil of forgetfulness works for everyone.
Mm.
And why? Well, because we come here to pass some tests. So if you know the answer to the test, it's not a test anymore, right?
Yes. Well, so philosophically, how do you understand your path with you having to make that huge pivot where you basically renounced your previous life? When you think of, like, what you signed up for, does all of that seem like it was part of the agreement, or do you feel like you were off track and it took that pivot to kinda get back to what you came for? Does that make sense?
That's a good Yes, absolutely. It's a very good question. I think in my case, I think every case is different. Every person has chosen a different destiny and different lessons that we come to understand and to integrate in our lives. But in my particular case, I signed up for that one.
Mm.
I had to go through that. I think for one, because I had karma with people that I had to meet mainly in France. I lived there for 8 years, so I had people to meet there. And that's one thing. And the second thing is I had to understand what a normal life, quote unquote normal, looks like, because what I have been doing in the last 15 years is helping people, going through their challenges and helping them transforming their lives. So I had to go through a transformation myself to be able to help them. Otherwise, it would be helping them from theory, from something I have read or I have heard from someone else. And it's not the case. I went through such a 180 degrees transformation that I can fairly be empathetic with their own lives and their own situations and say, okay, I have gone through it. So I know what it is like. And that was the only way to do it,
Yeah.
because what I was meant to do is helping them transform their lives. So I had to go through that, whether I wanted it or not,
Yeah.
from some point.
Yeah. I love that. I appreciate that, and I see that again also in myself, and a similarity, like a parallel I also see with you and with my expression as well, is that kind of bridging between the spiritual and the regular, you know?
Mm,
And and, because not everybody does need to run off to, the Himalayas for 3
mm,
months or for
mm,
3 years or whatever. For some people, it is the right thing. But, you're very relatable and, you can feel that you've got a foot in each world.
mm,
You know what I mean?
mm.
Which is different than, like, if you're looking for help, that's different than going to a monk, which has its benefits too, right? But it's just a different way of relating and kinda going back to also what you've been through and how, like, the empathy and the being able to really understand where somebody is.
Absolutely. And I think for a while I had to learn from them, because I I thought, and I just had this resonance with their teachings. But after those 10 years, I understood that everything that I had to learn from them was already there in me. And at that time I stopped, because I felt this is a different stage. And I had people around that said, okay, why don't you become a nun? Or why don't you stay there and live there? And it's like, no, because I was born in the West for a reason.
Mm.
I had memories of being a lama in a past life, and that's why I have this resonance. But it doesn't really matter. I chose to come here because I think it's a time, this time of the shift of the in this on this earth. We have to take a lot of good teachings from them and then apply them to our lives. And I have to say that once I finished that 10-year experience, let's call it that way, I feel that I don't relate so much to Eastern teachers anymore. I relate more to teachers that have been able to bring that wisdom to our world because they do understand our challenges, our mindset, our situation is very different, even our culture.
Yeah.
And I think we are more equipped to help others here in the West with our Western experience. And I that's what I feel right now. And I see that people relate to that, relate to us because we have brought that in a way, but we have integrated in a Western way of life.
Yes. Yeah. I really appreciate that. I have so many things I want to tell you. I'm like, or ask you. I'm like, what next? I was really curious where you were saying as a child you were very drawn to the stars and always kind of like, but I'm from there. Is there anything you want to talk about there with the more kind of cosmic connection that you might have?
I think it's difficult because people are not. I'm sure your audience is different, but most people are not very open to that, and they feel that like kind of woo woo and things like that. But for people that feel that resonance, and I think there are more and more light workers and starseeds among us that are waking up, and I think those people have a deep resonance with this message because they are similar,
Yeah.
and somehow they relate to the stars. Somehow they have felt different here. Sometimes how they have felt abandoned, and they don't feel they have found their tribe and they don't understand this is something that happened to me for a long time. It's like I don't understand why people do the things they do, why people are cruel to each other, why on earth, or to animals, or even as a child. It's like why people eat animals, they are sentient beings. I couldn't understand. And another thing that I couldn't understand is people are really ignorant of the nature of life. And then they don't want to listen about anything that will be a question their beliefs and their paradigm. So there were many things that I was like, I don't feel aligned with humanity in general. And of course, it really depends because I think we are at a very interesting times when so many people are awakening.
Mm.
And this is growing and growing. We're still a minority, but it's the biggest minority ever. And more people are feeling, okay, this society doesn't provide anything that fits my soul. And people feel deeply unfulfilled. And, even in the States, I read this thing like these statistics that 23% of Americans, and that is very relatable to any other Western civilization or nation, 23 of Americans only in the last 3 years, they have felt either anxiety or depression in the last 3 years. So clearly, whatever we have right now doesn't fulfill people, even people that are not spiritual. So sometimes it's going through that crisis and hitting rock bottom where people are willing to be open and to explore other things. And that's the way it goes. We are kind of close-minded in many ways, and we need a crisis. We need something happening in our lives that we cannot control to be able to say, okay, maybe there's something else.
Yes, I agree. And it's interesting as you were talking about that and not being able to relate to the human experience in a way, it brought back this memory of being, I mean, I must have been in like 4th grade or something, watching in my classroom this documentary, like a children's documentary about an oil spill and all the wildlife that had all this oil on it and all the ecosystem, and it was devastating. And I felt like, oh my God, everybody needs to see this and everything needs to change. We have to stop drilling. We have to stop and this is going to change everything because we can't, like, this is too harmful. And it kind of ended with, well, why don't, the kids were saying, well, why don't we stop? Why don't we stop this? And it was like, well, do you still want to have your telephones, your, and it had all these plastic things that use oil and cars and all of these things where it was like, well, we have to, this is the way we have all these conveniences. And if we want these conveniences, we have to have the oil. And it was kind of like, this is terrible that this happened, but we just have to put up with it. And the most important thing is that, our lifestyle keeps going. I thought that it was such a, like, stop me in my tracks, like, this has to change. Why are we not all, like, stopping our lives right now to say there's a different solution? And the whole purpose of the, documentary, or at least part of it, seemed to be this, like, acceptance of, "Okay, kids, this is how things are, and, we have to accept it and numb ourselves." It was really like, "Okay, now you know about this, but you have to learn how to deal with it." And I couldn't believe I wasn't hearing about it all the time after I learned about that. It just as one example, or you could have the same sort of thing with, like, the melting ice caps and where it's like, "Everybody stop. We need to pivot right now."
Mm.
And it and to me, I feel like there's just been this continuous sort of shutdown of like, okay, turn off. You've got to like not think about that because even though it's devastating, you got to, just don't look at it because it's not going to change. You can't change it. And I don't know if everybody goes through that or everybody, it just was part of my upbringing or just part of my experience. So it's just interesting because I think there probably
Yes.
are a lot of people who go through things like that, but
I think we as children, we tend to be more naive, and we tend to, before we get programmed, then we see things in a different way. But then we all get programmed through our education system, and then the media, and then society, and everything goes in one direction. And the direction is, we want you to be a photocopy of each other, and we don't want you to think. We don't want you to be close to your inner guidance. We just want you to follow orders. And you have to comply with whatever the typical expert or the one in government will tell you to do. Don't question, just follow orders. And you don't think, you are just a puppet here, and be asleep because this is the way we can control you. And be fearful because there's always some threat around, and then that way you cannot do anything but following orders because that's the way you will have security in your life. And it's all a big lie, a big fat lie. I'm sorry. So we are here. This is our predicament here, and this is our test. We come here to question. We come here to get in contact with ourselves, our true selves, our inner guidance, our higher self. We could say our soul, whatever we want to call it. And then realize that we are not these petty individuals that can change nothing. We are very powerful. We just don't know. We don't remember. And we have been told that we are not, that we are just a number. We are not. We are really powerful beings that have chosen to incarnate in this body, on this earth, at this particular moment with a big, big shift going on, because together we can change the world. And we have to maintain that focus on a different way of living is possible. And we can build the new earth, but we need to change our consciousness. If we accept, and I wouldn't be upset, it's like if we think that this is the only way to do things because this is how everybody does it, then we lost the battle. We lost ourselves. And we will have to repeat the lesson because we came here to wake up and help others waking up. So that's the free will. We have to use our free will, and using it in one way or another will change the course of our lives and will also change the course of the whole humanity, because we are one human family. That's it. It's not a few, depending on your nation or your bloodline or whatever. We are one human family. And it's only when we acknowledge that and then we all go together in the same direction. Separation starts to fade away, and we're just together in the same boat.
I love that. I feel like this dovetails into your roadmap to thriving through expanded awareness. Can you talk about that?
Mm. I think this is part of my mission in this lifetime, to help people understand that we are not here, as we have been told, to be materially successful, that becoming achievers should be our main goal in life. And I think we have to start changing that widely. I think we have come here to understand that we are spiritual beings having a human experience and not the other way around. And because of that, we came here to Earth. That for me, for Earth is not even a school; it's a boot camp because it's very difficult. The challenges here are very difficult, and you don't have enough role models, and the whole society, and even more now with all the technology misused and the social media and Netflix and everything is just bombarding you with messages that are negative. So we have to really make a big effort to stay in our center and to be able to expand, because everything, all the messages, all the inputs come to make us smaller and smaller, shrink in our own little corner, thinking that we are just useless or we don't have any capacity to change things. And we feel victims of society or circumstances or our upbringing, whatever. We are not. And this is the challenge. This is the biggest challenge. We need to understand who we really are. And once you understand that you are here for this experience that you chose, and you came here to help hold the light. And we together, all the light workers, all the star seeds, all the people that are awakening, are here to just connect in a big light grid to be able to help the birthing of a new society, the birthing of a new earth. But we can only do it together. And at the same time, it's an individual task. So each one of us has to choose to do that. And it takes effort, it takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of concentration, of focus, but it is feasible. And then when you do that, there are no limits. That's when you start thriving, because there are literally no limits whatsoever. We just have forgotten that we are those infinite beings having this experience. And we came here to really help Mother Earth.
That's amazing. Well, and that goes back to your amazing story of awakening and realizing that you needed a pivot. Are there things, if somebody's listening and they're kind of on the cusp of being curious about things and things that you're saying are resonating, but they haven't really, they haven't really started to dip their toe into what would living in my purpose look like? What are some things that you recommend as steps that people can take to start to connect with their purpose?
I think one thing that was very helpful in my life, and I do recommend it, is to do some volunteering work, because this is something that is easily done for everyone, in your community, and can be with a shelter for animals, it can be with people in a home, it can be with children in a hospital. There's so many ways that we can help. And when we do something for others that are not of our family, we start building a kinship with humans, with the whole humanity. And we realize that through service, we can relate to people in a different manner. And we realize that there's something else beyond all the differences. We are the same. We all want to be happy, and we all want to alleviate our suffering or escape our suffering. And by doing something for another, we understand that we are all together in this. And the other person, you are not doing it out of sacrifice. You are doing it because whatever you do for others, you are doing it for yourself. And that expands your consciousness because you are doing something out of altruistic principles instead of being so obsessed with me, and my things. And I think that helps you dissolving your ego, or at least disidentifying with your ego. And we receive so many inputs that you need to strengthen your ego, that will be a very, I will say, I wouldn't say easy, but simple way to start doing something that will be very helpful for you, even though you may think that you are helping others and doing something for others.
I love that. Talk a little bit about mind training and emotional mastery. How does this relate to a happier life?
Well, I think we are just mind. Everything goes through our mind. And we tend to think that, okay, if I only had more money or a better relationship, or if I had more followers, or if I had just a bigger house or a better job, there's so many things. Like, we always think that we need like more or something, or different conditions to be able to be to relax and finally enjoy life. So we are always thinking, let's go for the next step. Let's expand. Let's go for more. And I have worked for last 15, 16 years with a lot of people from all walks of life, including millionaires and celebrities, business leaders, and they all have the same problems that we have. It doesn't really matter how they are looked at from the outside, maybe very successful people, but they have the same predicaments. And they have a deep seated sense of anxiety because there's always something more to get, and fear because they can lose what they already have. So it's just a mirage thinking that having more of everything we want, we desire, is what is going to bring us peace of mind. And in the end, if we realize that there's not just one reality out there, it's just how you interpret that reality. As a matter of fact, I think there are 8 billion realities out there, depending on the person, because everything goes through our mind. It's not, Epictetus used to say, it's not what happens in your life, it's how you interpret what happens in your life. And Buddha said, the happiness is not a, a group of activities or conditions that you need to have. It's just a group of attitudes. So in a way, what we do with our minds is we are the script writers, we are the protagonists, and we are the directors of our own movie. And those movies are really distorted. They are full of greed, they are full of envy, frustration, all kind of emotional elements, very negative, that are affecting us, but they're not for real. We're just building it. And I think it will help people imagining that you go to the cinema. And the same way that when you go to the cinema and the movie looks so realistic that you are swept away with all the emotions because you think what is happening is for real. Well, the same thing happens in our minds. What we are imagining and fabricating in our minds seems so real that we are swept away with all those emotions. But we have to understand it works the same way as in the cinema. So what we have to do is, okay, all this is happening in my mind, but it doesn't mean it's real. So I can, yes, be reactive. Like, the natural way of doing things is, okay, I will be reactive and I will just be reactive all my life. With the same inputs, I will have always the same reactions, automatic. Or I can stop myself, look at what is going on, look at what is going on in my mind, and say, okay, I choose to act in a different way. Mm. And when you do that, you become free, really. Free of your habits, free of whatever is going on in your mind, free of your programming, and free of whatever society is telling you to do, to act, to think, to believe. And it's only when we do that, we can find our own path. And it's a path freedom. But it takes a lot of inner training. It takes a lot of focus on, okay, I do want to become a better person. I want to become a master of my own emotions, of my own thoughts, of my own words, and therefore of my own actions. So I want a different life. Well, okay, change your thoughts, change your words, change your actions. They have to be aligned, the positive and the constructive. Otherwise, you will get negative results. There's no way around it. Whatever you put out is what is going to come back to your life.
Mm, I love that. How does meditation play into this for you and with the transformation coaching that you do?
I think meditation, the same as for you, is just crucial, and there's no way around it. I think meditation is necessary. It's not the only thing that we have to do, but it's absolutely necessary. It's not a luxury. It's just something that will give you the key to start stopping your mind, start quieting your mind, start watching your thoughts, your emotions. Because if you don't have that ability of taking some distance from it, then you are a puppet of whatever is going on in your mind. You will be like a robot, reacting automatically all the time. There's nothing you can do. So the only way is through meditation, because meditation gives you that, first of all, it gives you peace of mind. You learn to watch everything that is going on in your mind with some detachment, and you gain time. Instead of reaction very quickly, you gain time between the input and your action. And during that time, whether it's this microseconds or it's minutes, then you can reflect and take a better action that is more aligned with your purpose, with your principles, with your moral. And that gives you the tools to be able to step up in your consciousness. So there's no way around it. It's totally necessary.
Mm. I love you say it's not a luxury, and I love that, and I feel like it's also one of those things that I've come across some people who feel that they do meditation for a little while and then they get to a place where they have more calmness, more joy, and so they feel like they don't need it anymore. And then, it's one of those like, I'm not going to take this medicine, quote unquote, anymore because I don't need it. But it's like this foundational thing that is, I don't know of anybody who has graduated from meditation. I mean, you've talked about the Dalai Lama and all these, monks, and it's like they're living their lives in accordance with spirit. And it's, they're not stopping. They're not going, oh, okay, I did my meditation time, years ago. I graduated out of that. So I always kind of challenge people when you might have heard people saying like, my life is a meditation. I live my meditation, and it's like, well, maybe, but you'd be the first that I've come across who is in that position, but
Totally.
yeah.
Now, I think we should not forget that there are two kinds of meditation. I think one is formal and one is an informal. And some people think that because they are in more awareness during their life, their daily life, let's put it that way, because they're more aware, they're more conscious, they're more mindful. They think that that will substitute the formal meditation. And I think they are complementary. We meditate to be able to practice that during our life, but we also meditate once we pass the first two stages. The first stage is calming or quieting your body and calming and relaxing your body. Then you quieten your mind. That's the second stage. Then it comes the third stage. And the third stage is going into a more spiritual phase where you go through your ego and your thoughts, and then you discover that there is something else. You connect with the spirit, you connect with your soul, with your essence. So people, I think, most of the times they just use the first two. They go through the first two and they think they got it, and it's not true. The first two will be like helping you going to the shore and see the waves of the sea. But the third one is when you go into the sea. And you can only do that through meditation. And then, of course, you can have those sort of mystical or big experiences doing other things, but only if you go into the sea. So it's not going to happen in daily life. If you are doing things, no matter how concentrated or focused or mindful you are doing those things, you are into doing, you are not into being. And that's the difference. And both are complementary. I don't think we came here to just being in not doing anything, but we have definitely not come here just to do things and be productive. There's much more to it. So I think they don't have the experience. Most of these people don't have the experience of going deep into the sea. So they don't know what they're missing.
Mm. Beautiful. Well, Monica, this has been an amazing discussion. Can you please tell people how they can find out more about you?
Of course. I have a YouTube channel in English and one in Spanish. So if you find the one in Spanish, go to the one in English. Don't get confused because I am bilingual and I'm always doing things in both languages. And then I have a website in English, which is my name, Mónica Esgueva, Monica. Esgueva is ESGUEVA.com. And you can find me there and see what I do. And I have a new book, and this book is the first one I have written in English. It's called The 7 Levels of Wisdom. I have here one. and this book, I think, it can be very helpful for people that really want to evolve and increase their level of consciousness. And it is designed and written for people that are starting a path or they are already advanced in that path to have more tools to continue their, I would say, the journey into spirit.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for being here, Monica. This has been an amazing discussion.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I think we have a lot of things in common, and we have in common this really deep desire of benefiting the world. So we're doing our best.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.